So, the Pokemon Direct has finally landed, and just a few days prior to E3 and Nintendo's major slot. And I'll be honest with you guys, I kinda liked it. This Direct has pretty successfully turned me around on my thoughts on Pokemon Sword and Shield. I was initially very bored and uninterested in the game, since it very much seemed like every other normal Pokemon game, but became a little lightened up over time, and now with everything they've revealed, I can say that I'm pretty strongly on board with this game and what it has to offer. Last week, to the day, I actually made a sort of predictions video on what the Pokemon Direct could possibly do to change the tides of my opinion. Feel free to check it out if you're interested in seeing that kind of thing and hearing more speculative predictions, but we basically listed a bunch of new avenues that the new Pokemon game could explore, as well as all sorts of British motifs they could go with. And in this Direct, there was certainly a bunch of surprises for me, so let's discuss just what it was that was shown off in the Direct, as well as maybe what more could be done, and what is potentially hiding under the surface for a potential E3 slot. So first of all, the new Pokemon. They didn't actually show too many, which was quite a nice surprise. I was expecting a good load of library of Pokemon or something, but nope, giving it small and simple makes it more of a tease of what there could possibly be. First up we get Wooloo, everyone's supposed favourite, and probably mine too, especially now that I found out that they move by literally rolling around. The grassy Pokemon Gossifleur, which evolves into the dandelion-esque thing Eldegoss. It has healing powers and looks kinda weird, but it seems like another generic flower Pokemon. Plus, it's called like Fleur. Isn't that more of a French motif fitting for X and Y? There's a new Raven Pokemon called Corviknight, which looks awesome. I very much like ravens and crows, so that's quite nice for me. And there's Dreadnought, the Bite Pokemon. I didn't know that was a brand. Yeah, it's a Pokemon. Now these seem unfocused to British things. Maybe ravens is a bit of a British thing, but at most these are just new creatures or twists on animals. I mean, we've already seen sheep Pokemon before, and flower Pokemon like every generation. So while I could predict some future rat Pokemon, it's got no real strand of logic to jump from. Although in this case, in London, it's pretty ratty in there. So the main thing of this game is Dynamax battles, and people don't really like it. It's less interesting. You get one maximum powered move per type, and I can understand it, but I kinda like the classic feel of it and the raid battles. Plus, there's not too much more room to expand battles in any unique and different way. However, there is a leak that suggests that there is potentially more, but we'll discuss that later. For now, at the very least, I'd just like to think of the idea of certain Pokemon in Dynamax mode, like Tyranitar is literally Godzilla, Alolan Executor could touch the moon with his face, and Wailord would destroy the entire stadium. Also, it's quite cool because we kind of saw a Dynamax Pokemon before in Torterra in the Detective Pikachu movie, and the Pokemon anime from like 20 years ago. This gimmick could get old and boring quick, so hopefully there is more to see and they do more with it. I'm expecting them to, but there's always a chance they won't, and that will be disappointing. So moving on a little bit, we've got the raid battles. I have a few concerns. I'm hoping for a start that it's easy enough for online compatibility. I assume that not having the Nintendo Online service means Pokemon will be unavailable in these games, but what if people just aren't playing it at the time? Or what if you can't connect? Can 3 people do a raid battle? Is it only locked into 4 people at once? What if the online capabilities are shut down on the Switch in like 15 years' time? If all of these literally will lock the Pokemon away, then that's really not good. Otherwise, I'm alright with it, as long as it doesn't drag on. There's clearly a lot of raid battles to do to unlock all the Pokemon in wild areas, and I don't want to be doing that for elongated amounts of time, you know? So the new gyms, they are not gyms anymore, well they obviously still are, but they're more stadiums now. It was a big relief to me at least that it's not actual football stuff. I can just complain about the protagonist outfit instead. I feel kinda dumb though for not expecting it to be like the Colosseums from Pokemon XD and Colosseum. They are literally my favourite games. They're the Pokemon games on the GameCube. In those games it was very much a giant stadium-esque thing where you battle against growing enemies. In this case, it could just be gym leaders. It works really well. So I really should have predicted that. Oh well. Otherwise, with these new gyms, there's not too much to add right now. They seem pretty easy to understand. There's no sign of puzzles in this Direct, but that leak that we'll mention later on does seem to suggest that they do still exist. So now the new characters. Sonia is the first one. She's cool. I assume she is the researcher observing type of character, researching Dynamax battles, but maybe they also link to the catch-em-all vibe? Maybe. There's Hop, your friendly rival, and I feel very meh. I like their design and their chippiness, and they look great, but I'm kind of on the bandwagon as well, that I'm not a big fan of friendly rivals. Leon is the heroic champion, also Hop's older brother, and this could potentially open some interesting story. I kind of felt like there could be a link with this guy being the bad guy. Whether they are secretly a high-ranking member of whatever the evil team is in this game, or they are somewhat mixed up in the evil due to their success, or maybe even they don't want to be evil, but maybe they're being child-friendlily blackmailed or something. It would especially be interesting to explore that idea, considering Hop's development as you go through the lands with him. There's also Professor Magnolia, who I'm not sure if they're named after the color or the plant, but it could very well be a theme with future characters in this game. And actually, considering the early area is a kind of countryside farmlands, maybe it's just a region-based thing and it is the plant thing. Also, it's kind of cool to notice that her twirling her little earring things matches Sonia's twirling her hair. Shows their relative influence on each other. And then we're introduced to Milo the gym leader, with the weirdest design ever for a gym leader. Well, actually, I don't know all the gym leaders, but it's a weird design anyway. They look 5 in the face and 25 in the body. I kind of don't like it. I hope this is a one-off. I don't want any more baby-faced buff dudes. They also have fidget spinner Pokeball holders on their thighs, but no one else has mentioned that so far. They seem to be a generically good gym leader, but otherwise, they're not very outstanding, other than that face. So now, the wild areas. This single-handedly changes my whole perception of Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is a great way of throwing the open world genre into the mix. It stays contained with the style of Pokemon and how they lay themselves out, but it opens up so much more. I love the wandering Pokemon. I'm so glad that it's not gone from Pokemon Let's Go, and it truly feels like you're exploring the world of Pokemon. You can shake trees for some berries, and perhaps there could even be some other interactables later. There's weather systems as well, affecting which Pokemon appear, which is really cool and seems like it should have been done ages ago, honestly, but I'll take it. Is there an item or Pokemon that can also influence Pokemon appearances? Like, does Cast Form with his weather-changing abilities change anything, or can you do like Sun Dance out in the overworld to make the sun appear? Night also seems to be effective, seeing ghost types more often. But there's really a full variety of appearances of Pokemon here, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. What's also nice in these wild areas, again going with that open world theme, is you can see distant areas on the horizon, which works great for that open world feel, and it keeps a goal up ahead for what you're aiming for. So now I just ask, when's the Stonehenge area going to appear? It just lines up too perfectly. There's even a mark on the map, actually, now that I think about it, so it's going to happen. When? On top of that, there could easily be more type-based wild areas. Obviously, you could just have your generic grasslands every time, but we've already seen a little bit of an icy wild area. The grass one's the generic obvious one. We've seen a sandstorm one. Water we see-ish in rivers and lakes and all that sort of stuff. Maybe there could be a steel wild area. Maybe a fairy-based wild area, being all spiritual and not quite ghostly, but, you know, enchanted and blessed. There could be a proper big forest wild area with bugs everywhere, which we have actually technically already seen now that I think about it in the first trailer, There could be a volcanic fire area, a giant mountaintop as is normal, and even going into the British and Scottish kind of area, you can have castle ruins. I mean, if you check out that map again, there's all sorts of new details, like the wild areas are practically plotted out in giant, huge areas on the map. Another thing people have noticed is bikes returning, and they can travel on water as well. This basically proves that the HMs have been replaced. Both Sky and Surf have been swapped out for either Pokemon that could do similar-esque things automatically, or just the bike. Maybe in caves we can use Flash by having the bike have a flashlight on the front. Will a bike ever be able to travel up a waterfall? Maybe it's like the weird submarine floating device in Pokemon Snap. Can it smash a rock? I don't know how a bike could possibly smash a rock unless it equipped a giant hammer on the front of it, but it's possible. It would be cool anyway if there were more upgrades to be had for the bike to cross other types of terrain. It appeared in previous generations with different bicycles, so I could see it happening and it would be fun to play with. If it's just faster mobility, then it's just a nice functionality upgrade, really. So let's talk about the legendary Zamazenta and Zacian. I had to write those down and read them several times to actually remember the name, because I'm gonna be honest, they're bad names. They're hard to remember, and they don't sound grounded in anything. Like, it almost doesn't make sense. The designs are also interesting. I don't overtly hate them, but they look like Lycanroc evolutions with a little bit of steel put into them. And the fact that they're both the same creature takes some getting over. though it does also look like they're on the same side against a shared evil. Maybe the evil entity split a single creature into 2 forms, which would be, I guess, interesting. That third evil is totally going to be the gun Pokemon next, but honestly, it's probably like a spear or a bow and arrow. The box art for Pokemon Sword and Shield, though, is probably my biggest qualm, which on one hand isn't too bad, considering that's the only qualm I have majorly. On the other hand, it's still a qualm. It looks bad. It's a white background and then the legendary Pokemon on top of it. It's usually the legendary, sure, but it looks like an early design placeholder. I think it's the white. It just looks so uninspired, you know? It looks like just placeholder. That's it. Rotom also appears in now drone form, perfect for camera movement in the gym battles, perhaps a little bit of world building. It's cool. I don't necessarily hate Rotom, but it's cool to see that they expanded his design and his traits into other electronics, since that's what he possesses. I also really like the bagpipes music we hear near the beginning and the end of the whole direct. It's pretty fun. I want to hear more. I'm going to download the soundtrack when I can. And it's very cool to hear some Scottish influence. So at this point, we're now going to talk a little bit about things that are unconfirmed and either could be appearing or should be appearing. It's more speculative as we go on from this point. The one major thing people like talking about at the moment is the potential for voice acting. There are no text boxes shown in any of this direct or the last trailer, and I would love to hear it. It obviously works quite well considering it's been done with the anime for like 20 years, but it could easily just be that the dialogue boxes have been hidden away for every piece of footage. I don't know, the cutscenes do look quite animated when you look at Hop talking about, but it could also very easily just be missing a box. I would be interested in seeing it anyway, even if it's just for the cutscenes. We can also see that there is a train transit system in multiple towns, which probably connect all the major towns and cities and make you go right past the giant wild areas. We see it throughout the map and see cutscenes within them, and maybe each progressive trip comes with its own full-on cutscene of stuff, which would be really interesting to see. It seems like a fairly functional little gameplay thing that isn't the centerpiece of travel, but it's a nice option. It allows you to fast travel to all the major cities, and you can use Carbonite to just teleport to the last one you entered. There's also a big looming final area seen in a lot of the places you end up, and it looks very Elite Four-esque to me. It's a cool way of highlighting a goal that you'll slowly lead towards. And I couldn't really continue this video any longer without talking about the leak. There was a notorious leak that has risen from the surface that supposedly came out 2 weeks ago and has revealed a lot of correct stuff. In it, they're talking about things like Gigamaxing, other characters, starter evolutions, and evil teams. If you don't want to hear spoilers of what could potentially be very real, then feel free to drop off now. But otherwise, we're going to go through this leak and see what I think of it and how it could potentially go if they did explore it. So here's what it says piece by piece. Your rival is named Hop, but you will also be facing against Bede and Marnie. So far, the Hop part at least is very much correct, so it could very well be possible. It sounds like a Pokemon X and Y-esque group of friends will be following you around, which is alright to me, especially because it allows for more room for a harsher rival. Perhaps the first train cutscene we saw is simply going from the starting town into the next major city, and it will be when we go to that city that we'll see 1 or 2 more characters, and then maybe in the next train cutscene we'll see a few of them actually adding to the cutscenes, because there's more of them as you go along the way. Team Yell is the gang in this game, who are well-meaning fans of Marnie causing trouble. Team Yell sounds like an odd team name to me, I'll be honest, and at first I thought it was maybe Team Yellow, like the Pokemon Go game or something, but Yell just makes them sound like protesters or something, which Brits do quite like, to be fair, so I don't know, maybe that's sort of how it fits with Marnie, like maybe Marnie's got some kind of issue that she's just sort of swallowing down, and they're like, no, I don't know, they're protesting for Marnie's freedom from, I don't know, something or other. Sounds the closest I can imagine is protesters as a whole team. Protesting against Pokemon battles? Protesting against the monarchy? Protesting against the champion? I have not a clue. To become part of the gym challenge, you will have to get an endorsement. Bede gets an endorsement from Chairman Rose and his secretary is Oleana. Okay, I don't really want to dive into this one too much, it's just kind of plot drivel. What a surprise, if it's a plot twist, then oops. Eternatus is the evil legendary. The other legendary will be a wolf who will either have a shield mane or hold a sword like Great Wolf Sif from Dark Souls or Bloodborne or something like that. This is dot on the money. Eternatus though, as a name, opens up for just about anything. Being eternal and everlasting? I don't know what kind of weapon or armor really fits into that notion. That's why I said bow and arrow and spear. Like a spear maybe lasts longer than a sword, even though it's wood, and a bow and arrow is kind of still relevant now. gun. It's definitely gun. Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing? I thought it was Gigamaxing. Either way, they are new dynamics that will supersize Pokemon in specific areas. Gigantamaxing is different from Dynamaxing as it changes what the Pokemon looks like. Meowth looks like a long cat, Lapras gets layers like musical bars to its shell and musical notes, and Pikachu looks like a retro fat Pikachu. This seems interesting, especially to those who dislike Dynamaxing, sure. Though all three examples are of Gen 1 Pokemon. So is it just a Gen 1 and 8 thing? Is that too much to do? Because do keep in mind, there were only 48 Mega Revolutions, and Dynamaxing allows all Pokemon to be involved. It's probably why they chose something so simple to translate. It seems like a double-edged sword. It would be cool, but it's also a lot of work, and could really push into the unbalanced nature of the Mega Revolutions as well. Sonia is Leon's former rival, who is researching the Dynamax phenomenon at the behest of her grandmother and professor of the game. Some Pokemon like Farfetch'd will get regional evolutions like Sirfetch'd. Meowth looks like a ball of spiky grey fur. This is pretty cool. I do love me some regional evolutions. I love Executor in the Alolan region, and Farfetch will become all formal and butlery. Squovet and Greedent are chipmunk Pokemon who will hide in berry trees and attack randomly if you shake too many berries. If they attack, you lose half the berries that dropped. This mechanic sounds a little annoying. Hopefully it's a risk versus reward thing or something you can see coming. I've also just realized that I read it as you lose half the berries that you dropped, rather than half of all of your berries, but we'll see. It also lines up quite nicely with an unseen Pokemon hinted at in the Direct on a t-shirt. The fourth gym is a Fairy-type gym, led by an actress named Opal. Milo, Nessa, and Carbu are the first ones. They correctly named Milo. The others are just name drops though, and originally it said that this was the first ever Fairy-type gym, but there was one in Pokemon X and Y. There's a lot of X and Y connections here. Maybe it's because it's just across the imaginary ocean, very close regionally, since it was set in France. Before fighting the gym leaders, you have to complete the gym challenges. Milo has you herding sheep Pokemon named Wooloo, but Pamper, an electric corgi Pokemon, will startle them and send them rolling elsewhere. Nice! I always suspected a new corgi Pokemon. Glad to see it's electric too. Nessa has you running through a maze where water blocks the way. Carbu requires you to catch Pokemon and get 5 points, but you have to be in a party battle with another trainer who's also trying to catch it. It's more interesting when we see them. What is a party battle? Is that specifically a new type of battle, or am I just reading that differently? Is there competitive fishing battles now? Maybe I'm reading too into this. While there is a transit system, you will have to go through the wild area at times, an open world biome that has a weather system and little pockets where wild Pokemon Dynamax and have to be beaten in a first-person raid. You will randomly see nearby players and interact with them to get their league cards and items. This is all accurate. It would be cool to see other players online interacting about. Though, is it locked to 3 other players, or is there more? And are only 4 needed for raids? Like, could you have 16 people in one wild area and only 4 go to a raid at a time? Would that also mean that wild areas are the single, like, online compatible areas? That would be quite cool. You get your own single player areas on the main routes and in the towns, and you go outside and suddenly it's online and everyone's around you. Up to 16 players, or 8, or whatever. Camping is how you play with Pokemon now. You'll get 2 toys, a feather toy and a toy Pokeball, which can raise friendship. You can also make curry, which will raise their stats and friendliness. Pokemon will not walk beside you in the overworld map. It sounds slightly uninteresting to me, but it's some people's thing, I guess. Scorbunny will have fighting moves, but is pure fire. It becomes Raboot, but I don't remember the final evolution, except that it looks like a fighter, and it looks humanoid. This probably meant to say pure fire, so I've changed it to actually say pure fire rather than pure fighting like it originally said. The description though sounds boring. Another fire with fighting moves, and the name Raboot is just ugh. Sobble becomes Sisile and then Inteleon, a chameleon with a spy theme. Nice. Grookey will end up as a giant gorilla that beats a wood drum to attack. Good old Donkey Kong, I guess. The best Pokemon so far is the blue seagull, who when it dives either gets a Barracuda in its mouth or a Pikachu, which it launches at its enemies. This sounds weird, though I'm not quite sure how it entirely works. Like, is this in battle and it will make another Pikachu like appear and then attack alongside it? Is it just an attack animation? Or in the wild areas, is that how it attacks you? It will dive down and attack you with a Pikachu and then the battle starts. Regardless, it sounds fairly new, and I wonder if any other Pokemon can have those weird, unique interactions with other Pokemon in its movesets. It's interesting. And that is all there is to know, pretty much. The Pokemon Direct showed all sorts of new things, and has genuinely piqued my interest this time. I've now officially changed my mind on Pokemon Sword and Shield, but of course, there is still more hidden up their sleeve. And with E3 just a few days away, it's clear that there's a spot left open for more Pokemon content. Be it from new Pokemon, Gigamaxing or Gigantamaxing, new wild areas, and hidden protagonistic characters. It seems Pokemon Sword and Shield isn't quite done yet, and I can't wait to cover whatever comes next when the time arrives, even if it ends up being another September Direct or something. In case you weren't aware, I'm also planning on streaming pretty much through all of E3 next week. I'll certainly cover the Nintendo Direct at the very least, but I hope to look over any Treehouse coverage as well, and I'll likely be streaming my workings on videos as I go along as well. So do check out my Twitch if you want to join in that madness next week. But for now, I think I'm gonna end it off here. My name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.